Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DEX Show. I tell you, I'm psyched about today's guest. He's Mitch Trytchta, Senior Project Manager for Digital Employee Experience at Vizient. Mitch, warm welcome to the show. So reading up on some of the ideas that we're going to get into today, I get the sense we're going to be talking about the unlikely dovetailing of digital employee experience and entomology. Is that correct? We'll get into it properly in momentarily. I just want to make sure I have my terms correct first of all.
Yes. Yeah, that is pretty correct. It's kind of entomology as well as the underpinnings of animal behavior, and how does that kind of feed into what we then talk about when we talk about digital experience and delivering a exceptional experience to our employees at their digital endpoints as well as just day to day.
Right, we're going to get into it then, Mitch, but let's begin by developing the terms a little more fully that we've just set out there briefly, and hearing a bit more about yourself. And I looked, as I say, on your LinkedIn. I can see you have an academic background, some background in research. So I think it would be great to start to hear about that, and maybe with a fuller explanation of entomology itself as well would be. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I by no means would consider myself an incredibly skilled entomologist. It happens to just kind of be the area of research I gravitated to. But yeah, entomology is broadly speaking the study of insects. There are suborders within entomology that are specific to different groups of insects. So, an entomologist studies insects, a lepidopterist studies butterflies and moths.
I knew that.
So on and so forth. So a variety of things there. So my interest in entomology was specifically centered, or is still specifically centered around eusocial insects. In this case, ones that build colonies or kind of societies, is specifically ants. Bees were a little too tough because they fly and sting, and I was just like, no, ants generally don't fly unless they're mating, and less stinging, easier to avoid. Altogether, just better off. You don't have to climb trees usually to find them. They're already everywhere. So yeah, my specialty was in ants, and I was really drawn to it because of the implications of animal behavior, humans as animals, and our psychological bases for behaviors, and what can we learn through ants, through insects, about how we operate as humans behaviorally, what are kind of the rules, the general principles. And it's especially interesting as we think about organizational behavior and how do we view ourselves in the structure of a company, or how do we behave as individuals within a company or colony, and how that kind of relates all the way back to when we talk about insects. So, we talk about the individual ants in an ant colony and the individual's employees in a massive company, and that there are behavioral mechanisms and forms of thinking that are kind of, very relatable to those two kind of ecosystems in their own right, and that, applying the thought of animal behavior, human psychology, and then when we talk about technology and digital experience, it all kind of connects through.
Let's come to that momentarily, Mitch. I want to get into those relationships shortly, but just a couple of questions about the study of ants. Ants are absolutely intriguing, right? And indeed, you made me think of the movie Ants with the Z. In that, which is of course a wonderful meditation on the relationship between the individual and the collective. No, which sounds like where we're going to be going in the discussion. But just before we do it, maybe hear something more about yourself. What if you were going to start with one or two facts about ants that even to this day bewilder you the most? Just details of their little civilizations which just boggle your mind.
Yeah.
What would you pick up on?
I would say one of my favorites is that, and it could be outdated research, but it is one that sticks in my mind, is research showed that ants make decisions on what they're going to do as individual ants based on their interactions with the ants around them, which may seem inconsequential, but you may ask yourself, how do we as people decide what we're going to do? How do ants decide what they're going to do, and they look around, and it's who did they just most recently interact with, and what was that person doing, or in this case, ant doing. So, an ant that is hatched in the center of the nest is first to interact with caregivers, so it becomes a caregiver. And then as it becomes a caregiver and ventures kind of outside of that central sphere, it interacts with maybe ones that are cleaning or foraging, and then it has that opportunity to become that, but it could go back to being a caregiver, and so on and so forth. So you end up with this really unique thing that the youngest ants tend to be at the center of the colony, and the oldest are on the outsides, where it is the most dangerous. But their behavior and what they're doing is based on who they've most recently interacted with. And I think that says a lot about even how we decide as humans how we behave. I think my other favorite fact that a lot of people I think may know or may not know is, most ants are female. 99.99% of them are female, just like how bees are, or for the most part. And that, males really exist to just mate and then be done with, and that all the work, all of it is done by females who are daughters of a central queen, or in some cases multiple queens. So it poses this idea that a lot of people want to think about it as for the common good of everything. It's for the colony, it's for all of these things. But really, when we look at it evolutionarily and behaviorally and mathematically, it's not true altruism for the sake of altruism. It is purposeful. It is action for the purpose of the benefit of self. So I think it is, once again, an interesting view of how what we may perceive as a selfless action for the benefit of a colony is really for the benefit of oneself, because the benefit of oneself aligns with the benefit of the colony. And that has a lot to do with them all being sisters to a single or multiple queens and so on and so forth. But it's this really interesting thought, because for a while it was just, oh, well, they only exist for the betterment of the colony. But in truth, evolutionarily, helping the colony is the most helpful thing they can do for themselves. And when they don't do it, there's usually a reason why that aligns with it is more beneficial for them to do something else. So it's this thought that, like, they're pragmatic. They're very pragmatic in what they do, and it's based on math and millions of years of evolution. But I think those would kind of be two of my favorite ant facts, if you will.
I love it.
The image I can't get out of my head, Mitch, is I don't know if you ever had one as a kid, the glass-walled box of sand, and you just watch the ant colony develop and grow, and correlating that to a typical office building is fascinating.
Yeah.
Two guys look at each other, hey, let's go get a coffee. All right, and seven of us all get up, we all go get a coffee together because that's what everybody else is doing, is a fascinating imagery.
Absolutely. And it's not, it's the other part I really like about it is, I don't want to belittle the amazing evolution that ants have and the remarkable abilities they have. But to my knowledge, they're not consciously choosing certain activities. They don't wake up and go, I'm going to do this or that. And they don't always take the most effective route to food. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they forage in somewhat random patterns. And it still is emblematic of a lot of what we do as people. We don't necessarily know the most effective path. And even once we find a path to get somewhere, we don't necessarily then say, all right, well, we got there. Now let's find the more effective means to get there. Let's find the single line instead of two lines to get there. And, ants operate on that same principle. If they found the way to get there, even if it's a 6-meter distance and it would be easier to travel 1 meter, they're going to generally travel that 6 meters because it's what they know and it's with the feedback they're getting. So it's very interesting from, once again, a behavioral standpoint of, how do we operate as people, and how are we where are we different and where are we not? But yeah, glass-walled ant colonies, never got to have one, which is kind of a blessing. Ants are incredibly difficult to keep. They are crafty as heck and will always find a way out of whatever you put them in. So would not recommend an ant colony in your home.
There's so many correlations, though, to employee experience and doing things just because that's the way you know how to do them, not necessarily because it's the right way, and learning a new path. Lots of things we could explore there. But, before we do that, I thought I made an interesting career move when I went from enterprise IT into software sales, vastly different environments for me. You took an even more significant shift. So was it almost like you had a major and a minor? What was it that that took you down the path of IT after being so focused in entomology?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different things. I think one thing to state is that one of my parents went into finance and technology, and the other went into psychology and medicine. So, as someone who was raised by, incredibly wonderful parents who were always saying, trailblaze your own path, I had to say, well, of course I can't do finance and technology or psychology or medicine. So I had to do my own thing in the world of biology. And I always loved animals and all the things in that realm. So it really just kind of was a natural fit. But as I progressed in my research and I did more research and I spent more time in a lab, I realized that I really missed connecting with people. And that it was kind of like, I light up when I get to share ant facts or get to go to wherever and do these things. So for me, it really became, okay, research was but a means to connect people to ideas and thoughts and feelings and empower them to say, why does this matter? Why do ants matter to someone who does SAP integrations? Why do ants matter to someone who is a pilot in the Air Force? What about these things? So when I was looking for something that was a little more normal per se, I had just gotten back from working on a deserted island for 6-ish, 8 months about, and I was like, hey, I want to do something slightly less dangerous, slightly more normal, something that pays slightly better too. I was approached and I was given the opportunity of like, hey, what would your thoughts be about liaising IT and R&D needs? And I said, oh, that seems pretty cool. That seems pretty interesting. That allows me to use, my research background, my love for people and communicating with people and helping people understand complex concepts and making them accessible, engaging, empowering, and actionable. So that was kind of where it began. And then I realized as I began working that my love really was with people. And it was, how can I use my scientific thinking and training and my love for animal behavior and entomology and all of these things to make sense of the big, wide world of technology that sometimes can be a big black box. And people are just like, I don't know. Like if I have a veterinary surgeon who can do, brain surgery on a non-human primate, but they don't understand how IT capital planning works, like that's not a deficit of their intelligence by any means. It means, how do we simplify this process? How do we make it accessible and engaging? How do we even make some of our processes equitable to people? And so that's what really drove me into this kind of world of IT initially was I saw the real ability to say, how do we make a remarkable impact on the day-to-day existence of people in this workplace, leveraging empathy, psychology, science, and all of these things, but not in an ivory tower sense. In the boots on the ground, let's really build a relationship and meaning here, and use these principles to drive value and improve your everyday experience. So I kind of found this unique realm of, wow, I get to leverage a lot of my skills in a way that is, unconventional and pushes boundaries, but is also very exciting because I get to watch people feel empowered and watch relationships grow from a sense of mutual understanding and respect, as opposed to just like, it's too hard, it's too technical, you'll never understand.
Super cool. It's obvious why you took then to DEX. I wonder if you could tell us the history of that relationship with it. Where did you first come across the concept, or was it always implicit in what you were doing, and what
So
technology
it
you developed?
wasn't initially on my radar. I moved into a new role in the infrastructure group, and it was just kind of something that one of the other leaders in the area had someone reporting to them who owned NextThink, and the person who had hired me knew I had a deep love for how do people really feel about things, and the purpose of my role initially was going to be how how do we get data behind what people's day-to-day experience is at different affiliate sites? Let's say Singapore, let's say Germany, let's say wherever. How do we figure out what their true human and technology pain point is, and then get data behind that to drive action? And so when I was introduced to NextThink, and the concept of digital experience, this really kind of like a light bulb went off in my head of, wow, this is at the intersection of so many things I love, of be it, you know, the human experience, the emotion, the empathy, but also the data behind it, the scientific rigor behind it, and the ability to drive decision making through the quantification and qualification of what some people would say, well, it's too hard to know how people feel, or that's just flippy and it's whatnot. And it also, sits at this beautiful edge where, I think NextThink is a great asset here in like the UX and the usability of it. And I think, that's also something that I've really been drawn to is, how do we make things that are not only technically usable and functional, but also beautiful? And I think, NextThink kind of scratches that itch for me, because it not only has these technical capabilities, but it also is visually appealing and usable and is designed in such a way that someone like me who is non-technical can say this has value to end users and non-technical leadership in a way that allows me to tell a story that is both emotional, technical, numeric, whatever it is. I can tell a storyline to every single person in this audience using this type of data that drives meaning and value and dollar signs. And that to me is kind of the fulcrum or like intersection of what it is that I think I'm, meant to do in this kind of IT sphere, and that hybrid of various things. So when I was introduced to NextThink, I was absolutely delighted, because I was like, here's something I can get fully on board with. Like, this matches my ethos of what I want to deliver to people, no matter where I am.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for the colony, right?
Yes.
It's taking after the colony. You could almost say NextThink is the glass wall, looking in on the ants and seeing what they're doing and are they effective. And I'm really trying to connect the dots between ants and IT.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's for the good of the colony, but it's also for the good of the individual. And I think that's the really powerful thing here, is that we're able to serve the good of those two things without making them at odds with each other, which is truly the gateway to success. When success of the colony is not at odds of success of the individual, and the experience of the two of those can be intertwined and synergized in a meaningful way.
As I look out the window in my hotel at the skyscrapers in Boston, I will never look at them the same. They will all be ant colonies to me.
It is, corporations. Each corporation is a lot like an ant colony. This is one of my other fun facts, is that, let's say we have, we'll call them fire ants. Just generally, everyone kind of knows fire ants. There's lots of different types, but we won't get into that. We're going to say fire ant, and it's generally, you can have 50 colonies of them. Each one is unique. Each one has its own genetic makeup, just like companies. Each one responds differently to stimuli to a different degree. So let's say a novel stimuli, do they perceive it as threatening or interesting? How do they respond to these things? And you can plot that, and it usually forms a normal curve, a response curve of some will be extremely adverse, some extremely interested, most very much in the middle. And this is really helpful when I think about the implementation of NextThink, or, where do we have low-hanging fruit and what might be a more long-term opportunity on the other hand. That's one of my other fun ant facts is, colonies, individual ants per se don't have a personality, but that's not to say individual humans don't. You definitely do. I want to let you know you have a personality and you matter. But the corporation has the corporation has a personality, and in the same way that a colony does, and that personality can also kind of be the underlying culture in many cases. So when you say, what's this personality, think about it as your company culture. What are those invisible things that, if you plotted on a curve or against other companies, would you then see?
What do you see as kind of using that the empathy coupled with science. Where do you think that all leads to the future workforce and the future of work more broadly?
I think that the future of work is increasingly digital and increasingly metropolitan and really diverse. It's work is becoming a larger, more complex ecosystem than it ever has been before. And within that, one of the central things that we can really, I think, with the rise of, as we talk about things and the importance of things like mental health, emotional well-being, and things like that, we're starting to realize that these things are not inherently separate from the well-being of the company outputs and happiness and workforce effectiveness and things along those lines. And so as we get to that, we have this ability to say, we want to deliver for the business. We want to deliver for the business. It's all about the business. Well, the business is made of people with feelings and emotions and things of that nature. And empathy allows you to get at that answer, to get at what is the true problem here, what's the true need here. Is it a technology need? Maybe. Is it a human need? Maybe. Is it one or the other? Sure. Could it be both? Absolutely. But it's important that we think about those things. And that's where, with the rise of, centers of digital experience or, digital experience directors or whatever it might be, an owner of that digital experience is essential, especially as we look at the even younger workforce. I'm pretty young and I, grew up with a ton of technology, but the generation just under me has even more endpoints in their life from an earlier age, and they expect highly personalized, highly interactive, efficient, enjoyable, good UX, whatever it is, experiences digitally. And without those, they're incredibly frustrated. So as we look at the future of work and even the future of the workforce, it hinges on delivering exceptional digital experiences, and delivering exceptional digital experiences is based on understanding from an empathy standpoint what is most important to that end user. And the truth is, you can guess at it all you want, but the best way to know is to literally ask, or boots on the ground, live with them. And it's not tangible to do that in a company of 60,000, 50,000 employees, but NextThink allows that initial voice. It allows that initial interaction, and it shifts the conversation of IT just kind of existing when you absolutely need them to now IT saying, how can I help you? How can I be your ally? How can I go from being the dreaded phone call to being maybe a phone call you don't even have to have, and the positive sentiment you can have instead of like, wow, that was easy, that was great.
A last question for you for the day, for this fascinating conversation. And that is, we used to ask this a lot when it's a little more in vogue. And I feel like it's gone out of vogue as circumstances have shifted over the last few months. But, there is going to be in the future more of a synthesis between HR and IT. It's already come a long way from where it was.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk about it, I could imagine you very much at the forefront there. What is your vision of a role technology and tools such as NextThink might play in the future in terms of sustaining not just digital employee experience, but employee experience at large?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think it is, like I said, when we look at our younger generation, who will one day be, the center of our workforce, their experience is digital experience. It is, did this app work? Is my phone working? We have become so accustomed to that it is at the center of things. You cannot, if I talked to you today and said, how was my day? And I told you, well, my day was fine. My Wi-Fi didn't work. My phone was broken. My computer's gone and all of these things. Day's bad. There's no good day with those things happening. And as we think about that, that is just all the more relevant to the upcoming generations and even the workforce today, which is highly technology dependent. So I do not think you can separate an IT experience or a digital experience from a overall experience. Those two things are combined because our digital experiences shape how we interact interpersonally, in many cases, even with people. If my Microsoft Teams isn't working, this can hamper my ability to have an effective relationship, business relationship, personal relationship, whatever it is, with a teammate, with a business colleague, with whatever it is. So those things directly hinge on each other. And I think it also is, as we as a society, like I said, have normalized the importance of personal well-being, that empathy component, that understanding where you are emotionally, and that there are dollar signs tied to emotion. There are dollar signs tied to emotion when it comes to your workforce. Not just the customer, not just the client, but your workforce inside. When they are sad or upset or happy or whatever, there's money associated with it. And that's a really powerful driver. And that as society has shifted to say we value this more, therefore so have company stakeholders. And, in turn, so have large corporations. So I think the future is really, we're going to see somewhat of a juxtaposition. Maybe it seems, counterintuitive. We're going to see a more digital workforce that also has higher emotional kind of needs that need to be met by the company. They're going to have a higher level of emotional intelligence and average level of needs that are going to need to be met. And it's not just about meeting those from the standpoint of saying, I check this box, but finding that middle ground of, did I check the box and are, 95% of the people actually happy about this? Or do they just feel like this was transactional? And so, it's an interesting place to be in, to want to do more work, but that work needs to become increasingly more personalized, to deliver things more at scale, but to do so with empathy and knowledge of the experience of your even larger scale of end users. But that's the fun of it. That's the challenge. That's the road that we've not ventured down, and the only pathway is forward. And so, there's no mistakes. And I think this is where, my science comes out, is that the best discoveries, whether they want to tell you or not, many of them are incidental. It wasn't like this great light bulb moment and they were like, haha, I have a revelation. It was like, well, I tried this, it didn't work, but I then changed this and it did. And then you think, why did it? And you discover a new pathway. And that's where digital experience is so exciting for me, because the only way forward is to truly try. And yes, trying is scary, but trying is necessary if we want to get to where we already want to be today, and where we have our eyes set on for tomorrow.
That is awesome. And look, if you want to hear more of Mitch's awesome thoughts, I believe, correct me if I'm not wrong, Mitch, but you're going to be a guest posters coming up on the DEX Hub.
I think so, yeah. Well, I'll have something on there. So. Or I don't know how much it'll have to do with ants, but we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. I'd be disappointed if you didn't make science to it, but we'll see. We'll have you back here. We'll have you on the DEX Hub in the future, of course, as well, I'm sure. And listen, mate, thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, no problem. Bye.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.